Good morning, all of you. Can you hear me, dear students? Please confirm with the text if you are able to hear me. The network is awfully slow. That is why it's getting very difficult for me to sort of. Okay, Anusri, thank you. It's audible. Thank you. Now, dear students, if there is no video, also you try to listen if the audio is sort of working. In that case, let it be an audio lecture. In that case, okay. So please do listen whatever I am saying. That I'm going to teach you today a new chapter from your supplementary reader, that is Footprints Without Feet. And in this story, there are two characters. Number one, Harassing, and number two is Anil. Okay, there are two characters. So in this lesson, we'll come to know how Harassing, a very young 15-year-old boy, was transformed totally by his employer Anil. So let's find out. If you are not able to see, you please listen to me so that you are able to come to know what is this lesson all about, right? Okay, so dear students, let's begin. Okay, so you can keep your mobile in landscape orientation so that you can see the text properly. And in case in the course of my lecture you are not able to see the text, in that case you listen to my voice. Okay, so dear students, the story highlights the total transformation of a thief's life due to trust placed in him by his employer, right? So this story highlights the total transformation of a thief. So as I said, Hari Singh is a 15-year-old boy. He became a thief. Actually, he became a thief after he joined Anil's house. Because of some temptation, some greed, he became thief. Okay, so initially he seemed to have cheated his employer Anil, but eventually when he thought about Anil's good work for him, whenever things became very much like he could recall that Anil was very helpful to him and he helped him in many ways, then Hari Singh gave up his evil intention of stealing and gradually became a very transformed personality. So this is what we shall come to know about a 15-year-old boy, Hari Singh. Okay, so that is the meaning of this first sentence here. The story highlights the total transformation of a thief's life due to trust placed in him by his employer. Next, the story revolves around Hari Singh, a 15-year-old thief who influences Anil to appoint him a cook. Right? Next, Anil, a young struggling writer in his 20s, is simple and easygoing. So we have come to know something about Hari Singh, who is a 15-year-old and a 15-year-old boy come thief. Okay, who somehow manages to influence Anil to appoint him initially as a cook. Right? But we haven't learned about Anil. Anil is a young struggling writer. Okay, in his 20s. Okay, so he's around. He's in his 20s. He could be around 24, 5, whatever, but in his 20s. Okay, in his 20s means he would be from 20 years to 29 years, between 20 to 29 years, not specifically stated. Okay, and then last point to see the kind and empathetic nature of Anil. The kind and empathetic nature of Anil changes the habit of Hari, who decides to devote his time in studies. So Anil was so good. Anil was so kind to Hari Singh that eventually Hari Singh had to think twice before eventually cheating him. Right. So therefore, his good conscience, his good heart every human being has a good and a bad side of it, of him or her, right? So his good side overpowered his bad side. That is why he remembered, he could recall the contribution, the good work done by his employer Anil, and thus he could eventually become a transformed, totally transformed personality, right? And he eventually decides to devote his time in studies. So, dear students, as you can, as you have as I have already told you, this is a story about two characters. First is Anil, who is a employer, who is a writer in his 20s, right? And Hari Singh is a 15-year-old boy who insists Anil to appoint him as a cook in his house, right? And then Anil was so sympathetic, he was so helpful and kind towards Anil, but in spite of that, Anil was so helpful and kind towards Hari Singh, but in spite of that, Hari Singh decided to steal some money from Anil. But eventually, he could recall the contribution made by Anil in his life, and therefore he changed his way, and towards the end he came back to Anil and did not eventually cheat him. So let's find out what made him cheat Anil, who was such a such a good help to him, right? So dear students, let's find out. Okay, so as you can see, the right onto your screen is the thief story, right? Is the thief story that I am going to teach you. So here you can see, dear students, here you can see a young boy makes friends with Anil. Anil trusts him completely and employs him. Does the boy betray his trust? That is the question. Young boy here is none other than a 15-year-old Hari Singh. He makes friendship with Anil somewhere. Anil, being a very simple and easygoing person, became influenced by Hari Singh, and Anil goes on to employ Hari Singh in his house as a cook. Now the question is, does the boy betray his trust? Let's find out. This story again is a first person narrative. As you can see, it starts with I was still a thief when I met Anil. I was still a thief when I met Anil. Here the narrator is the thief Hari Singh himself. He acknowledges the fact that when he met Anil, he was still a thief. Means from before he was a thief. It's not that after he came to Anil's house he became thief. No, he was a thief by nature even before he met Anil, his employer, right? So let's find out. And though only 18, I was an experienced and fairly successful hand. Even though he was just 15 years old, but still he says that he was an experienced and fairly successful. He was an experienced and fairly successful hand. Means even though he was 15 years of age, he was a very successful thief. Anil was watching a wrestling match when I approached him. When Hari Singh approached him, Anil was watching a wrestling match. Okay, in a stadium, Anil was sitting and he was watching a wrestling match. He was about 25, so his age is specifically mentioned now. About 25, not like exact age, but about 25. Anil was a tall, lean fellow, and he looked easygoing, kind, and simple enough for my purpose. So, as Hari Singh was a confirmed thief, confirmed means he was a seasoned thief, very experienced thief. Therefore, he was looking for ways as to how he can cheat people, and he could find a golden opportunity in Anil, because he appeared to be a very simple and kind and easygoing person. And this kind of people, it's easy for him to cheat. That is why he approached Anil, because he appeared to be easygoing, kind, and simple enough for his purpose. I hadn't had much luck of late and thought I might be able to get into the young man's confidence, right? So, as recently, Hari Singh was not able to cheat many people. His luck did not help him to convince people, okay, to cheat people. Therefore he tried his level best to win the confidence of Anil. Then he approached Anil and he spoke to him. He approached Anil and he spoke to him. So what did he speak to Anil? Let's find out. He says, just a minute. Okay. He says, you look a bit of a wrestler yourself. You look a bit of a wrestler yourself. I said, a little flattery helps in making friends. This is an important line, dear students. A little flattery helps in making friends. So when Hari Singh first approached Anil, he started with a statement saying, you look a bit of a wrestler yourself. Okay, so that Anil becomes happy when someone stranger approaches him and compliments him, saying that he looks like a wrestler himself. And then Hari Singh tells us that a little flattery, it was a flattery statement on the part of Hari Singh to Anil. Therefore he says, a little flattery helps in making friends. Flattery, you understand, dear students, what is the meaning of flattery? Flattery means if you say some kind words to people just for the sake of winning his heart, not for the sake of giving feedback, but for the sake of just winning his heart. If a statement that you speak in front of a person in praise of him, which is not a genuine statement, then you can say it's a flattery, right? Flattery words means those words which are not genuine, those are meant to win the heart of someone or to please someone temporarily, right? So that is what is flattery all about. Now next he continues, so do you, he replied. Then Anil replied very calmly saying, you also look like a wrestler, which put me off for a moment because at that time I was rather thin. So at that time Hari Singh was rather thin, that is why he was not convinced by the statement of Anil when he said, you too look like a wrestler. Well, I said modestly, I do wrestle a bit. He said, well, I said modestly, I means here Hari Singh, I do wrestle a bit. He said, he also told lie. Hari Singh also told lie, saying that yes, I sometimes do wrestle a bit. Then what is your name? Anil asked him, what is your name? He replies, Hari Singh. I lied. So this is not a genuine name, it is a pseudonym or a false name, dear students. I took a new name every month. That kept me ahead of the police and my former employers. Now Hari Singh gives us additional information about his way of life, about his personal life. He says that every month he changes his name. That kept me. I took a name every month. Every month he takes his name, changes his name. Okay, and that is what helps him to be away from the police, to escape from police, to run away from police and his former employers. Former employers means those who employed him, in whose house or in whose shop he used to work before. They are called former employers. Former means not now, not current, earlier. Okay, former means earlier. Employers means a person who employs you, right? So Hari Singh was an employee in the house of many employers in the past. So every one of them he has, or all of them, Hari Singh has cheated all of them. That is why every month he used to change his name so as to save himself from police as well as his former employers. From this statement, it is obvious that he was working in the house or shop of many people and he cheated almost all the people. That is why he was changing his name every month and he was changing his name so as to be safe from police as well as his former employers. Right now, let's continue. After this introduction, Anil talked about the well-veiled wrestlers who were grunting, lifting, and throwing each other about. After that, Anil became a bit friendly with Hari Singh. He talked about the well-veiled wrestlers, like wrestlers that make their body. They veil their body so that they, like it's the kind of a, you can say, formality for the wrestlers to veil their body, who are grunting, lifting, and throwing each other about. I did not have much to say. Anil walked away. I followed casually. I didn't have much to say. So Hari Singh does not have much of experience about wrestling. That is why he did not have to say, because if you do not know what is the topic all about, then you have nothing to say because you don't have content knowledge. So Hari Singh did not have content knowledge about the wrestling match, wrestling procedure. Therefore, he preferred to keep quiet for a while. Hello again, he said. I gave you my most appealing smile. I want to work for you, I said, but I can't pay you. Anil said, I can't pay you. You can work, but I can't pay you. I thought that over for a minute. Perhaps I had misjudged my man. I asked, can you feed me? Then Hari Singh asked, can you feed me? Anil said, can you cook? I can cook, I lied again. Again Hari Singh lied and said, I can cook. Then Anil said, if you can cook, then maybe I can feed you. If you are able to cook for me, then I can feed you. He took me to his room over the Jumna sweet shop and told me I could sleep on the balcony. But the meal I cooked that night must have been terrible because Anil gave it to a stray dog and told me to be off. The first meal that he cooked, Hari Singh, in Anil's house was a terrible food because Anil gave all the food to a stray dog, to a street dog you can say, and told him to be off. But I just hung around smiling in my most appealing way and he couldn't help laughing. He couldn't help laughing means he started laughing. So somehow Hari Singh was trying to convince Anil that next time onwards I shall cook well. Later he patted me on the head and said, never mind, he would teach me to cook. Then Anil was kind enough towards Hari Singh. Instead of turning him out of his house, he said, don't worry, I will teach you. He also taught me to write my name and said he would soon teach me to write whole sentences and to add numbers. Anil was so kind. In addition to teaching cooking to Hari Singh, he also promised him to teach him how to write whole sentences and to add numbers. So can you imagine how much charitable, how much kind and helpful was Anil? I was grateful. I knew that once I could write like an agitated man, there would be no limit to what I could achieve. So Anil thought that if I could teach like an, if I could write like an educated man, then I can earn a lot of money I can earn, do a lot of things and earn a lot of money. That is why Hari Singh also became happy to learn that his employer Anil has decided to also teach him basic sentences and some basic numericals as well. It was quite pleasant working for Anil. I made the tea in the morning. See, this is the routine. This is the routine of Hari Singh. This paragraph is very important. Hari Singh says that it was such a great pleasure to work for Anil. Okay, so why does Hari Singh think it was a great pleasure to work for Anil? Let's find out. It was quite pleasant working for Anil, and you see the daily routine of Hari Singh. I made the tea in the morning and then would take my time buying the day's supplies, usually making a profit of about ₹1 a day. Supplies means it could be ration, it could be vegetables, whatever, right? So he said it was my duty to make tea in the morning, and then I would take my time, go outside and buy the provisions for Anil. Provisions include vegetables, ration, etc. And in the process of shopping or marketing, you can say, in the process of marketing, Hari Singh would end up earning a profit of about ₹1 every day. ₹1 every day. He used to make a profit of ₹1 every day. In those days, even a rupee made a lot of difference. A rupee also mattered, dear students, because ₹1 was also having a lot of value. I think he knew I made a little money this way, but he did not seem to mind. Okay, as he was a kind-hearted person, even though he could discover that somehow I am making a profit of ₹1, but he did not seem to mind. Okay, so okay, so dear students, even if it is buffering, if you are able to hear me, it's okay. Okay, because at least you can understand the story. At least you can understand what is going on, the sequence of the story, right? So even if there is some buffering here and there, it doesn't matter much because you are able to hear me, right? As long as you are able to hear me, it's okay. Okay, let me now continue very. No, actually, I think my time is up, dear students. I think my time is up, so we shall meet tomorrow at the same time. Tomorrow we will log in straight away at 8:50 on the dot. Okay, so please do come at 8:50 on the dot, because tomorrow I would like to finish this lesson. Do not read at home. We shall read together here, right? So thank you, dear students. Thank you so much for being with me, and I shall post your attendance on Google Classroom. Okay. After my class gets over at 11:30, by 12 o'clock I shall post your attendance on the Google Classroom. Please do check the attendance at 11:45. 11:30 my class will be over. By 11:45 I will post your attendance on Google Classroom. Thank you so very much. We shall continue our story tomorrow at 8:50 sharp. Thank you. Have a nice day.